Welcome to Grace this weekend. Thanks for being here. My name is Ryan, campus pastor of our Akron East campus of Grace Church. And if we haven't met, would love to meet you, maybe hear how you made your way to Grace today. And before we even jump into our conversation today, I want to just mention something that Pastor Aaron mentioned a little bit earlier about Discovery Group. And if you maybe are trying to figure out what's your first step or your next step, if you've been coming for a little bit, or if maybe this is your first time here, I want to just make sure that's super clear. If you're looking to get involved or maybe begin serving or find your way to a small group and you're not sure how to navigate the church, or maybe you're not quite sure if you are committed to Grace or not, want to know a little bit more about what the church is about, Discovery is probably the best way to do that. And so we're going to start another group. It lasts about 4 weeks. And so it's right after this service on Sunday afternoons. We have lunch, childcare available, and we'll go 4 Sundays in a row, kind of walk you through all of that. And so that starts on March 7th, kind of for the next 4 Sundays. So if you wanted more information or if you know that you want to jump in, just sign up, and we would love to have you there. And I think you're going to be glad that you did. And then we started a series a couple weeks ago called Things Jesus Never Said. And I think this is a ton of fun. We kind of looked at different thoughts that maybe have emerged from our culture or emerged in our world and maybe get attributed to God or to Jesus. And we have taken some time to look at a few of those over the last handful of weeks. If you've missed any of those and maybe want to catch up, you can go to our YouTube page and watch there, or go to the website and get caught up there as well. But we should kind of take in our time in unpacking a statement or a belief at a time that's going to show up in our world and trying to unpack it. I think it's been fun, and part of the reason it's fun is we look at these different statements and unpack them. What we realize is there is some truth in them. There is some of it that we can keep, and there's maybe big pieces of it that we can't keep in each of these statements. And so we've been unpacking those week to week, and I think it's been really, really fun. And so last weekend, I told you, if you were here or you watched online, I mentioned that we were going to open up a conversation that really we're going to end fully this weekend. So this is kind of part 2 of last weekend. And so before I even show you the next thing that Jesus never said, I want to catch us up real quick on some of what we said last week here, kind of on the whiteboard. So let me walk you through it. What we looked at the phrase last week, life is fair. Life is fair. We said Jesus never said that, right? Jesus never said that. Jesus didn't tell us to expect life to be fair, and we should know that. Instead, in essence, what we said was this. We said we as human beings don't find ourselves in a situation where we're going to have equal experience of life and good and bad and pain and kindness. Instead, here's kind of the reality that we live in a situation where God in his goodness and his kindness is going to offer that good and that kindness really to all people. To all people. It doesn't matter where you've been or what you've done, that God's sun rises on the evil and the good is what the Bible would say. That there's good that is going to come to everybody. And sometimes that's not fair. Sometimes people who have done some really bad stuff get some really good things, and the math doesn't always add up maybe the way that we think it should. We said on the flip side, it's also true that we said we stepped on the sin bomb a long time ago, and that kind of left some shrapnel all over the place in not just us, but in creation. And so now my experience of life is going to be marked by pain sometimes. There's going to be pain in my experience of living life here on the planet. Jesus never said that. And some of you might be like, really? It seems like he should have said that. I mean, being a good person feels like a good thing to do. In general, we don't want to be bad people. We don't want to be people that don't do good things. Is this something that Jesus actually said? Go be a good person. No, Jesus never said that. Well, what do you mean, Ryan? What did he say? It feels like the Bible tells us we should do things that seem like they're in the general ballpark of good. How is it that he didn't say it that way? And here's really what we mean is we're going to unpack this today. When we say be a good person, I think this is what's behind it often. oftentimes when we say be a good person, what we mean is I'm gonna do things that are good for humanity. I want to, as I approach my life, I want to be somebody that gives back and contributes. And certainly there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong or bad about being somebody who does good things or contributes in specific ways. But what's challenging, what we're going to see today, is the difference is maybe what I hope to get from the good that I'm doing. Right? When I approach being a good person, sometimes what's behind that is that there's an assumption that because I've been a good person, that one day God's going to look at me and say, man, there's like people who are not so good and people who are kind of good, and you're kind of on the kind of good list of things. So like you're in. These people are maybe not so in, so we're going to be okay, right? If I fall generally into the good people camp, that's kind of the same thing as being a Christian, right? No. That's what we want to kind of unwind that concept today. And in order to do that, I want to introduce us to a little story here. I want to set it up, give us a little bit of background before we jump in. We're going to look at a situation where Jesus is choosing his disciples. So Jesus was a rabbi. A rabbi is like an ancient Jewish teacher. There's still rabbis today, actually. And rabbis had disciples, people that would follow them. And rabbis were teachers, right? So they would teach an environment a lot like this. And they would also have people that would kind of follow them around or hang out with them. And a disciple would think like this. They would think, I want to know what you know, rabbi, teacher, guy. I want to think the way you think. And really super committed disciples would look at the rabbi and say, I want to live the way that you live. And they would kind of attach to a teacher. And this continues to happen to this day. There are rabbis and disciples kind of all over the place. Jesus would have been a rabbi like that. He was more than just a teacher, more than just a rabbi, but he was a rabbi. And he would find himself gathering, collecting his disciples. And what's really cool about what Jesus did is he did it in kind of an unorthodox way, is he picked these people from all kind of different walks of life. And they were not like the traditional high-achieving people in the religious system that he would pluck his disciples from and invite them to follow him. He would gather people from all over the place, right? If Jesus were kind of maybe gathering people in America today, he might grab somebody who's a Republican and somebody who's a Democrat, somebody who lives in lower economic situations and somebody who's maybe in an upper economic situation. And you can keep going on and grab a diverse group of people and gathered them together, and they became his followers. One of the people that he chose to follow him is a guy named Matthew. Matthew was a tax collector, but tax collectors were like hated people. And here's why. The Roman government had taken over the Jewish people. They were in charge, and they would tax them. The Jewish people had a hard time with that because they were a very independent people, man. They were like, hey, God is our God. We are his people. We should like rule ourselves. The Roman government, what they would do is they would recruit some Jewish people to be tax collectors and go back and get taxes from the Jews. So they kind of invite people to sell out their own brothers and sisters and go collect taxes from them. And often they would get rich doing it. So these tax collectors were like, they were sellouts. That's how they would be viewed. Like, you sold us out. You went in with the Romans and you chose yourself over us. You're a jerk. Nobody likes you. Right? It's kind of how they would be viewed. Jesus chose one of these guys to be his disciple. And that would be Matthew. And Matthew actually is going to be the one that tells us this story in his book of the Bible. And that's where we pick it up here in Matthew chapter 9, verse 10. Here's what he says. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? Pharisees equate that to religious leaders of the time. These are the kind of the pastors and priests of the time. These people in charge of the religious situation. And they looked and they were like, hey, why does Jesus hang out with the tax collectors, these people that are the scum of the earth? Why does Jesus hang out with the sinners? Sinners, when they're described that way, are going to think in terms of prostitutes and criminals and people who have truly done some things that are not awesome, right, in society. And Jesus is going to be hanging out with these tax collectors and sinners. And what we bump into in this story and what happens in humanity, period, is often because of sin and because of the pain of life, what always happens, always what we will do is we will find a way to divide against each other. We are always going to struggle with until Jesus comes back and makes all things new. We are always going to run into the temptation to find a reason why I should not be associated with you. There's always going to be a reason for that. You're not good enough, or you don't have the right upbringing or the right background, or you've done too many bad things. You hit the enough line in my mind, and now no longer can we be associated with one another. So I'm going to draw the line here, and now this is going to look like distance between you and I. No, I don't associate with people like that. Do you know who they are? Do you know where they've been? Do you know what they've done? Sometimes that looks like ignoring and putting up a fence, kind of distance between us. Sometimes that looks like you're dead to me. Right? It's got different faces to it, but there's always this wall that's going to show up. Man, and let's just be honest. Let me play it out for a minute. Sometimes for good reason. Sometimes we hurt each other, right? There's real pain involved. We know that. There's sin. All right, so there's real bad stuff that can happen, not just from sin in general, from creation, tornadoes and diseases, but sometimes there's sin between us. And sometimes we've been hurt by each other. And so sometimes it makes some sense to say, wait a minute, maybe I'm going to put a wall up here. What's fascinating about the story and this interaction is the way that Jesus responds to this situation. The normal religious way to deal with this problem is we don't hang out with them. We don't hang out with sinners and tax collectors. We certainly don't eat with them, because eating with someone in the ancient world basically says we're good. Like that's approval. That's a statement of approval. Man, you eat food together, that's like a big deal. Food in the Mediterranean world is big deal stuff. You eat together, you're like cool, right? Because food matters. I'm married to a Lebanese woman. I experienced this thing. Food is real. It's a very important part of my life now. You guys ever seen Big Fat Greek Wedding? Fascinating movie. That's pretty much my life. Okay, so here we go. All right, so this line exists. Jesus is in essence saying, he's in essence saying, nah, I'm not going to do this so much. I'm done. I don't want to play by these rules. In fact, I'm going to erase this completely. Right? And the religious leaders they don't have a category for what just happened. We don't do that. We don't interact with those people, and we certainly don't interact with them that way. The way that we would with a friend or a brother. Now listen to what Jesus says, how he responds to it. He says, skipped one. He says, on hearing this, Jesus said, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. He says, hey, Pharisees, man, you think you're healthy? You think you don't need me? I actually haven't come to help you. I have come to help sick people. You need to learn this. Go and learn this: I desire mercy, not sacrifice. I remember reading this for the first time and really trying to process it and not really understanding what was being said. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. What's interesting is in our humanity and in our continual desire and temptation to divide from one another, what happens is we're also tempted to sacrifice. Here's what sacrifice looks like. Now I'm going to do some good stuff for the planet. I'm gonna just like throw out some good things and hope they help somebody. And as I throw out some good things into the planet and hope it helps somebody, I'm gonna feel better about myself. It's gonna ease my conscience a little bit, and hopefully it puts me in like good favor with God, right? So throw some teddy bears at some poor kids and throw some money to some people and hope it does some good, right? And Jesus is saying, I don't actually desire that. Hear me. It's not that God would never ask us to do something that just simply brings good to others. Of course he would. But here's the heart issue. Here's the heart issue that Jesus is driving at. He's saying, here's what I desire. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Did Jesus say be a good person? Poor kid, teddy bear. No. What did he ask of us? He asked of us mercy. What does that look like, Ryan? From a heart perspective, what God wants for his children is he wants his children who he has gone to great lengths to show mercy to show mercy to their brothers and sisters on the planet. What God longs for us to have is the ability, the supernatural ability to love people who are unlovely. Those people, that person that I would love to or naturally would be apt to cut off from my life and disregard from my life and get out and distance myself from, God would say, I want your heart to be soft and open and compassionate for that person. You're like, Ryan, how far do you want to go with this, man? I'm pretty sure this is available to all people, right? This is what we do. Mercy is what we offer to all people. We're talking about like everybody? What about like convicts? Yeah, convicts. What about sex? Yeah, sex offender. What about What about, right? What about people who have hurt me personally? Yes. Now hear me, good question, right? What about boundaries? Aren't boundaries real? Are we talking about enabling? There's room for that entire conversation, absolutely. Do we need to be wise and put boundaries in and think it? Absolutely, but from a heart perspective, what God desires from me is that I would long for the betterment, the best for this person. That there would be no one who in my heart I say, you're dead to me, I hate you in my heart, I wish that you weren't alive, get away from me, and then I go over here and try to do some sacrifice. None of that is pleasing to God. That's not what he's asking for. He's saying, here's what I want for you. I want you to do for others what you hope happens to do you when you're in this seat. Because you and I have all been in the seat at one time or another when we needed mercy. When we needed mercy. Man, I need mercy regularly. Literally, 2 days ago, I was sitting at the table having breakfast with my kids, and I've got 3 daughters and a son, and they're young, and man, I said something and just totally put my foot in my mouth with one of my daughters. I mean, no excuse, just blew it. Insensitive, right? She's young and sensitive and sweet, and Dad just blew it. There's like, there's no excuse. There's no coming back from it. I just blew it. And literally, I'm looking at my little girl's eyes, and I've got to look at her and say, honey, I'm sorry. Dad, will you forgive me? Right? Dad messed this one up. I needed her mercy in that very real situation that played out this week. Right? On a micro scale, in that micro interaction, I've been a person that needed mercy. On a macro scale, on a big scale, when I came to know Jesus, man, I was awakened to the fact that I had been offensive to other people. I didn't even know it. I didn't know that I had stomped on people in selfish ambition to get to the top of the things that I was trying to chase. Didn't even know I did it. Maybe a little bit, but not to the extent that I had actually done it. I didn't know that I had hurt and used people. And as the grace of God hit my life, it opened my eyes, and all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, I'm a person who needs mercy from other people. This was my entrance into following Jesus. I had to go on an apology tour and tell a ton of people, listen, I'm sorry, and here's all of the ways that I've offended you. And frankly, I have no excuse as to why I've done what I've done. I'm at your mercy. When we have been in places where we need mercy, you know what you want. You long to find someone who will be open to showing you mercy, to not judging you according to your failures. Because if we judged according to our failures, who could stand? Mercy between people is what God intends for us, at least at a heart level. How that plays out in individual situations is going to be unique and different based on the situation we find ourselves in. But from a heart perspective, mercy is far, far different than sacrifice. And it's far, far different than just being a good person. It's actually much harder than that. And it involves forgiveness. And it involves a soft heart. It involves me showing the mercy that I have been a recipient of. Now, what else does this lean into, right? Because as we experience life, we're also going to run into other pains that we bump into. Here's what the writer of course, from Isaiah says. It says this: learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow. Okay, watch how this works. This is amazing. Super simple, right? As I'm living life, this is me and this is you. We're going to have situations where we need mercy. We're going to need situations and bump into situations where we're going to find injustice is playing out. Now, when I say the word justice, at least in my mind, what comes to mind is I think, putting a criminal behind bars so that they get justice. We tend to think of the negative side where you get what you deserve. At least that's what I think of when I think of justice. The Bible is going to use it a little bit differently. Here's how the Bible is going to interact with it. When somebody looks at somebody else who is weaker or in a situation they could be dominated or taken advantage of, and they take advantage of that person for their own gain, right? They use someone, they work a situation, and they cause injustice to happen in this person's life. What the follower of God is called to do is we're called to see this injustice, and we are called to actually get into the thick of helping to fill in the gap that was left by this person's offense. Follow that? There's going to be a gap here. The fatherless is going to walk around and have a gap in their life because they didn't have dad to protect them and to teach them and to train them. I grew up for a portion of my life with a broken family situation where I didn't have dad at home. And I can attest to you that is real. There's an injustice when you don't have mom and dad in a loving situation in a safe home environment where there's some gaps left. And man, I thank God that there were some people that got into the thick of those gaps and helped fill them in. What they were doing is they were doing justice. They were filling up what was lacking in my situation. This is what the writer of Isaiah is saying. As people hurt one another and take advantage of one another, what people of God do is they get into the thick of that injustice and they take up the cause, they plead the case of someone who does not have the experience of justice themselves, and they help fill in those gaps. The widow, the alien, the stranger, the orphan, the fatherless. Right? I would say in our culture, the recovering addict, the single mom, right? The kid whose family blew up, or who lost a parent to a tragedy. You can see the situations where you would look at that and say, oh, either because of general sin in the world or because of a specific situation where injustice is happening between a person or a system and another person, there's a gap left, and what we do is insert ourselves as we lean into God and look for his direction into those injustices, and we try to bring justice where it's not. Saying, man, Ryan, that's really different. That's really different than being a good person. Right? Being a person of mercy and being a person of justice is very, very, very different than just being a good person. It's actually much more demanding, much more difficult. I would actually argue it's something that's supernatural, something that is beyond our ability to produce in and of ourselves. Right? If a lack of mercy produces a distance and an apathy and a wall, and a lack of justice produces a situation where someone is discriminated against or taken advantage of or used or abused. We, as the people of God, are called to be people of mercy and justice. Here's what I said in your notes. I said, good people do good to feel good or to appear good. Redeemed people love because they have been loved. Boy, those are two completely different drivers, but behind what might be similar activities. Could somebody go volunteer at the blah blah and help out and be trying to be a good person? Sure. Could a different person be doing that same activity out of love and passion and the desire for justice? Absolutely. Did Jesus tell us or ask us to be good people? No. He called us to be redeemed people that then involve ourselves in the work of love and in the work of redeeming others. This is what caused us to be distinct, unique. Because this is supernatural love that I can't produce and you can't produce. I'll just be honest, guys. I was just studying this week, and I find in myself the longing to protect myself from people who have hurt me, and distance myself from people that are offensive to me. If I'm honest, I find myself at times not knowing if I have the energy to get involved in bringing justice where there's not any. I was convicted about that because when I stop and I remember how much mercy I have been shown, how much overwhelming kindness Jesus has shown to me, it causes me to find a way to show mercy and to fight for the justice of others. And without that, I don't know, I think I'd just check out, right? And protect myself and hang out with people that are like me and find a way to cocoon. But I'm not called to be a good person that from afar just throws out some kindness. I'm called to mercy, and I'm called to justice. And I'll just say this, if you're looking to be a follower of Jesus, first hear me say that mercy is available to you. I'll say it again, no matter what you've done or where you've been, who you've hurt or how you've blown it. There's a God who took the hit and paid for your sin and for mine. That's available. If you never received that, if you never said yes, I just want you to know that's on the table today. And if you're hearing it right, if it doesn't quite make sense, it feels too good to be true, it's not. It's just you have a God who is unbelievably good. Guys, and for the rest of us, I think the question that we ask ourselves is this one. I think we have to ask ourselves, what am I really doing here? Like, am I just trying to be a good person and do good Christian-y things and smile and wave at people and throw out some token donations and show up at church sometimes, maybe, and I'm a good person? Listen, or are you wanting to be a redeemed person? A person that has been bought back from the dead? If that's who you are, I'm just telling you, you're going to end up being a person of mercy and a person of justice, because you won't be able to help giving away what has been given to you. The forgiveness and the love and the compassion and the kindness is going to overflow out of your life and the lives of the people around you. That's who we are. It's what we do. So I think we got to ask, which one of these am I doing? See, I could have grown up my whole life doing this thing. And you might discover, wait a minute, I never really actually jumped camps. I never became a redeemed person. It's fighting for the good and the love of others. As the band comes up, I'd love for us to wrestle that all through. It's a big conversation. As we sing and we worship, let's work at being honest about who we are and what we're about. Would you pray with me? Father, this whole conversation to me it's humbling, or it's eye-opening when I look at your willingness to be grateful, your willingness to be kind to the ungrateful and the wicked, to me, Lord. It blows my mind. And God, I confess that you are much more merciful than I am. And you care much more deeply about the justice of others than I do. And for that, Lord, I confess and I ask for you to forgive me. God, would you give us courage today? Give me courage to be honest about what we're actually looking for here, who we're actually becoming. God, cause us to be redeemed people that just can't help loving the way that we've been loved. Meet us here, Lord, even now.